Here's an experiment for you. Take passionate experts in human resource technology. Invite cross-industry experts from inside and outside HR. Mix in what's happening in people analytics today. Give them the technology to connect. Hit record. Pour their discussions into a beaker. Mix thoroughly, and voila! You get the HR Data Labs podcast, where we explore the impact of data and analytics to your business. We may get passionate and even irreverent, but count on each episode challenging and enhancing your understanding of the way people data can be used to solve real-world problems. Now, here's your host, David Turetsky.
Hello and welcome to the HR Data Labs podcast. I'm your host, David Turetsky. And like always, we try and find fascinating people with fascinating topics to talk about the world of HR data and analytics. Today, we have Jon Burton from Visier. Hello, Jon. How are you?
I'm doing well, David. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today.
Wonderful. So, Jon, why don't you give us a little bit about your background from Visier and before Visier?
So I've been with Visier for the past 7 years, and in that role, I've been able to partner with many clients along their people analytics journey. My role is not technical. It's more the strategic change management that can include content, advising around training, rollout, best practices. So it's been a very fun role as this people analytics space has grown and be able to see some of the companies and partner with them along their journeys. And prior to that, I spent 13 years with PwC and Saratoga Institute, helping organizations measure and benchmark their workforce. So that proved to be a nice kind of foot in the door around all things along the HR and workforce journey. So it's been a very fun experience getting from there to here.
Awesome. Well, we're going to dive into that in a little bit. But one fun thing that you may not know about Jon, I hate to say this, but you almost died twice. That's pretty awful.
Indeed, I did. Thankfully, I did not successfully achieve death in either instance, but episode 1 was at a rock concert, the band Metallica. My brother and some friends and I went to a concert, and we were moving our way up front. I was in my late 20s, and we started to fall and went with the crowd. And
oh my gosh.
I remember holding my brother's arm, and he looked at me, and then I couldn't get up. And I was down for about a minute and a half, and I kept on trying to get up, and I couldn't.
Oh my God.
And then I gave up, and then some large, muscle-bound security man got me up, and then I spent about half the rest of the concert in a daze because I lost oxygen. It was not pleasant.
Oh my gosh.
So
you were trampled.
Yes, more. I didn't get stepped on, but I didn't get air for a long period of time, which was not good. And then episode 2 was in the Utah desert. My brother and I went on a bike ride that we thought would be about an hour and a half. It ended up being about 20 hours, and ran out of both food and water. We spent the night in the wilderness, and I'm happy to report that, at least for me, when I ran out of food and water was more important than food. First got back to the car, the first thing I had was a beverage, not food. So I thankfully survived. In both instances, provided perspective that I'm just grateful to be alive.
And you should not be going anywhere with your brother anymore.
We will be careful. we all learned a good story there. So yes.
Yeah, definitely. So today's topic, Jon, is going to be the lessons that you learned from helping over 100 implementations of people analytics. That's a lot.
Indeed it is. Yeah, I've been fortunate to, again, have the opportunity to partner with lots of organizations, various levels of maturity. And some of the things that I've seen are very important are, we have a lot of clients who I see will come in who will start just beginning wondering, hey, I want to do this analytics thing. So it's the new hot topic. So they will buy analytics, but they won't really have a problem to solve. So this would kind of be at the more basic end of maturity. So they like the concept of analytics. They've got the right goals, but maybe not quite the right people in place. They may have a team that is doing both analytics and reporting, and a single person doing both analytics and reporting. So they'll be able to stand up a platform like Visier or other solutions that are out there that are also quite good, but they won't be able to really do analytics. And for me, analytics is, we're not just getting data out to an end user. We're getting data out to an end user. We're partnering to solve a problem. So it's great if you can tell me what my turnover is, but you can help me partner on how to reduce it or improve it or focus in on a key population and give me an actionable insight. That's what I need to get. So at the basic end, I'll see organizations that will use analytics as kind of more of a glorified version of reporting. They may have predictive analytics capabilities that are embedded into that. They may be able to have a standardized way of looking at turnover that will run across things, and it's not different sources. But it's not really starting to solve the problem. So that's been kind of one lesson learned, that there is a larger percentage than I would want of organizations that I would kind of put into that bucket.
But John, I think that you kind of said it yourself, that a lot of companies start with reporting. And reporting is one way for them to get insight out of their human capital management system investments. And that's where most begin, because that's what gets bundled in. And, for them, the journey starts with understanding the data that they have at their fingertips, and then that discovery process that you mentioned of what kind of problems am I solving, that's a higher order level problem that may not actually fall into the purview of the people who are asking for the reports, but it may be the purview of people who are either senior leaders or people outside of the HR world who are asking questions that reporting was never intended to actually solve.
What happens when employees behave badly? Boy, we could do an entire TV show, maybe a Netflix special on that. Well, Ryan and I sat down and recorded episodes for FAMA, and we asked practitioners, give us your most outrageous story. The sales leader that brings cocaine to work, whatever. Just bring us the outrageous, and it is funny. So if you need a laugh, which we all do from time to time, search for workplace misconduct wherever you get your podcast, and you'll find it. And trust me, you will laugh and cry, but you'll definitely laugh. All right. Thank you.
Correct. And I will also kind of add to that, David, and say that for many of the organizations I work with, there will be a period of reconciliation of if they're using a tool that will not massage the data, but give people direct access to what's there, of just reconciliation that, HR and workforce data is not perfect. It's messy. There are retroactive transactions. There are things like that can and do occur, and it can be messier than other data sources. But so what that translates into is there can be some confusion within users of, well, headcount said this last month, and I'm seeing turnover, went up or down 0.2 of a percentage point. The key insight that I want folks to kind of rally their heads around is that's less important than directionally. Is it going up? Is it going down? Which groups are being most impacted? So that's, I think, the kind of area that we try to guide our clients towards.
A lot of time, though, that's cultural, and it may actually come from which department is actually seeing those changes. I will tell you that having dealt with the CFO's office, they're very particular. They're peculiar as well, in a good way, but they're very particular because numbers are their business. And when you tell them that there are 50 heads in a specific group and their numbers say that there's only 49, they're going to wrestle that one down to the ground to ensure that they understand it. And then if in the future that changes and HR says something else, then that's another thing to wrestle. And so culturally, I think always when you're dealing with groups inside the company like CFO's office, you are going to have that struggle. And I think that maybe one of the things we want to talk about in your lessons learned is, how does HR deal with those differences throughout the organization? How do they come to common ground with those other users to the data that you're talking about, that messiness of the data?
Yeah, I've seen that be a journey, and a journey that suggests a level of sophistication for organizations. So at one end, I had a client that asked, can we make the Visier tool not incorporate retroactive transactions? So what was once March 2021 data will never change. That's not really how it works.
No.
So at the other end of that, I'm seeing an increasing amount of clients who recognize the value of partnering with functions outside of HR like finance to have them all align on, okay, here's a definition of headcount. There may be some difference in terms of what you're thinking about, but there's some value in a consistent standard throughout the enterprise. And if we say headcount is 10,563 and you've got 10,468, hey, we're in pretty much the same basic bucket. We can quibble about some things, but having that same number and not confusing the CEO or other key members of the leadership team that may see a different data set from different people that are all right, but are not the same value, can only cause confusion. So I'm seeing a number of my clients where they'll go through a journey to start to educate finance about, what is headcount? How do we look at it HR? Why may it change? and I see it empower great conversations because HR may not look at the world through a cost center view. So we'll see clients who will bring in a cost center hierarchy to kind of align to the world in the way that HR looks at it. And HR can educate finance on the ways of the world that they're looking at and other cuts of the data that perhaps they haven't been able to see, like job title rather than just a high-level job family that can help add value for everyone. So that's been fun to see. And I'm seeing a lot more of that happen with my clients.
One of the things we've actually had conversations with our clients as they're in that journey is create what we like to call a data governance model, where there are clear definitions. To your point, establish definitions, establish a good understanding about what it is we mean when we're talking about certain things, so that when it is presented to those groups, they have a very clear picture because there is a taxonomy associated with it. There is a glossary. There are definitions set up. There are even formulae that are actually spelled out quite clearly that show people, whether it's in finance or other organizations, even the CEO's office, where, when we say there are 49 people, this is what we mean, whether it's FTEs, whether it's butts and seats. And that data governance model provides a really good context, as you're talking about, for that maturity of the organization to consume those analytics.
I'm nodding, which doesn't go through well on a podcast.
Yes, the listeners have not heard the nodding, but yes, they understand it.
But I agree strongly with that. And something else that I'll add to that, I'm going to yes and you, David, is I think it's important that, so I see some of my clients where they'll say, yep, my role is analytics plus data governance, but they don't have the authority. So there needs to be authority tied to that, because we can check a box to say, yep, here's our standard. But if there isn't that executive sponsorship to say, where'd you get your data from? It's not from this, and your definition of concept from the mine, and here's why, or here's turnover, right? So there's always going to be that desire. I want my own unique way to tell a unique story that can be fine, and that can be one approach, but I think it's much cleaner and crisper that we're all operating off the same set of assumptions and understanding.
Totally agree. And actually, I love the idea of an executive sponsor not being the CHRO, by the way, being Correct. Somebody outside of the HR organization who can provide a level of authority and a level of example. That person, that executive becomes the person who then champions the world of HR analytics in their business and does what I've talked on this podcast many times, which is having an example that you can point to and say, this is business data, not HR data. So stop calling it HR analytics. It's business analytics. I mean, we know it's people analytics or HR analytics, but that person can espouse that this is something that the business needs to adopt as its own and to cease calling it or treating it like it's just another thing out of HR.
David, if I can yes and you again with a quick example of one of my clients, if we think about, as we're kind of guiding our clients along a path of rolling out a people analytics solution, part of that's change management. In reality, we would always want a non-HR executive sponsor, but in reality, even getting the CHRO on board can be challenging for some organizations.
Sure.
So just sharing what I've seen in my experiences, but I'm going to now kind of marry that with one of my clients went out with the largest and most profitable part of the business. That was their pilot group. So they rolled out to that person then rolled out to the C-suite. I mean, it was an amazing, they were super thoughtful in terms of how they approached it. And that's driven dramatic action. So I've heard stories back from this client that the CEO will pepper the CHRO with questions about, hey, what are you seeing in turnover in this group? Because the CEO is in looking at the data and wants to make sure that the CHRO is also looking at the same data set. So, I mean, that's just a great story of, starting at the top, getting those executive sponsors that can have a real meaningful impact on this type of rollout.
So, John, what characteristics or practices have you observed from these clients? And let's try and bucket them into companies that are still pretty basic around their analytics, they're average, or they're advanced. What are the differences between companies that you find in those three different buckets? So
I'm going to start and we'll work up the maturity curve here. So in terms of the basic, what I've seen, and this can range size, it's not like all large global companies do this well. I've seen small, scrappy organizations be along every phase of these maturity model that I'm going to share here.
Sure.
But at the most basic, I see organizations that, again, kind of more bought people analytics as a way, because they're hearing more about this. They don't necessarily have a key business or HR problem to solve. Because I think we can start with an HR problem. I may be able to drive down time to fill, and the business may not care about that. But if I can do that, we're still starting to solve a problem. But if I don't really have a problem or consistently have a problem, I can bring data in, push data out, but to what end? So that would be kind of the basic end. There's not really necessarily a desire to create or enforce data standards. We were talking about that before, David, where each group can have their own desire, how they want to look at turnover. So that may result in, at least in my world, we'd create perhaps custom metrics or custom calculations. So one group may look at turnover with one definition of average head count, another group may look at it based off another. That's not really optimizing what we should be doing as we're looking to roll out a new solution. Because that's the opportunity to kind of pause and say, hey, we're going through this effort. Let's go do this right.
Right. And have people speak the same language and have them have that common definition. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. So, yeah. And I think that's critical. And then I'll also see, and I've kind of observed this in my time. So at the more basic level, I see in organizations that there's kind of that field of dreams that if I build it, they will come. Again, if we're just pushing data out without context, business problem, a sponsor, people holding other people accountable, my experience is HR business partners will want to do this. And they're often a conduit from what I see with my clients out to the business. But they'll often get, again, kind of overtaken by the other kind of less strategic but necessary items that are required of an HR business partner.
Sure.
So they make a focus in on that. And the other items, David, that I'll see is in terms of kind of what they would do with the rollout at the more basic level, it's going to be just training. I'm going to make people aware of it. Here you go. And there it was. So there's not necessarily accountability. There's not follow-up. It's there. I'm checking a box that I made this available. So those would all be characteristics of kind of at the more basic level. If we move up the maturity curve and go to something that would be on the more, I'll call it common side, average, if you will, there is a problem to solve that the HR team is focused on, that they're going to be often roll this out in what I'll call waves. So wave one may be kind of the core people analytics team, reporting team, service center. It could be some of those early stakeholders, HR VPs, centers of excellence, and then maybe senior leaders. So that would be kind of, we're getting this out beyond just a real limited scope, pushing this out to more people. But we're pushing this out with maybe limited guidance. The people analytics team is just saying, here you go. They're trying to do the right things, but they're constrained in terms of time and resources. So it's there. If requests are coming in, it's often a request to, hey, can you create me a type of visualization to help answer this question? Or how could I answer this type of question? So in effect, the people analytics team can become more of like a quasi report builder versus more of that key strategic business partner. So that leaves to me just opportunities on the table. Because again, my belief is people analytics is we're there to solve a problem.
Absolutely.
And then at the advanced stage, so here we're going to certainly have a business problem to be solving. And we're going to use that data. So there's a kind of a known issue that we're looking to solve. The tool that you would be using or leveraging would help address that and address that quickly. And the goal here is to enable an HR business partner to understand how they're going to drive action. And let me share a quick example here of what I saw with one of my clients who did something like this that I thought was super thoughtful. So they rolled out to their HR business partner team, and this is a common challenge that I see with a lot of my clients is the HR business partners are well-intentioned, but just don't necessarily have perhaps the skill set to be data savvy as a broad brush. There are some HR business partners who are fantastic at this.
Sure. Yeah.
So what this organization did was they set up through the CHRO was kind of their executive sponsor, and they gave their HR business partners one of three problems to focus on. So each HR business partner chose a problem, partnered with the people analytics team who went with them to go through, analyze the data, tell a story to their peers about what they saw, and enable that conversation with other HR business partners around, here's what I saw with my group, and here's how I look to address that. And that empowered different conversations between the HR business partners in terms of, how to not just look at the data, but how to think, talk about, and drive action. So that was a great example of a way to go beyond.
It's also really a great skill building because you'll get people in various groups in an HR organization that will feel comfortable and some that will not feel comfortable having that same conversation. But as they're sharing it, what happens is that people see that they can literally use this to their advantage instead of fearing it and overcome those fears by having those conversations and by seeing the results in those other groups. So I love your point. I think it's a really good one. And it also demystifies why we're talking about this analytics thing. Analytics is not a 4-letter word, and it's definitely not something that, we should be afraid of, or we should go back to our economics classes and the statistics classes in college and worry about them either. And I think that's what a lot of HR people do. They think of this as a higher order problem, but it's not. It's something that they're solving every day. And if they have their peers around them to bounce these ideas off of, then, all better.
And I'm going to again yes and you, David, and I will suggest that I hear a lot of organizations say, who want the seat at the table, but this is the opportunity to do that.
Right.
Let's go proactively do the business. We may not hit everything just right. We may not tell the right story. We may not have the right solution to the problem, but we're trying to problem solve with them versus, hey, I need a set of anniversaries that are coming up in my group. So we're trying to say, hey, I noticed your head count went up or down in this group, and I think this is a key group for us. Are there things that we can help partner on to go address that? I think just having that conversation is going to start to move that needle very much in the right direction.
John, one of the other things I've found in organizations that succeed with people analytics is they do have one or two very skilled HR people, not in the people analytics team, but that act as the conduits, act as the resources. There are generalists that we'll turn to them and we'll say, hey, can I ask you a question about this stuff? Can I bounce some ideas off of you? Am I looking at the data the right way? Am I seeing a flaw here? Before they call error or before they, throw in the white towels, before they say, I give up, have people to talk to, have the best of your company step up and take the mantle of being the coach on the team that can help them solve these problems, these business problems, and literally be a problem solver and, be the go-to people. And, it does take a little bit of volunteering. It does take a little bit of action to be able to have that happen. But I've actually seen that work quite nicely.
I have as well. And for some of our clients, they'll call that kind of their champion network. And especially organizations that are globally based, there's often kind of the people analytics center of excellence is in headquarters. So that it may be distributed time zone wise from other folks. So being able to empower that so someone doesn't have to wait 12 hours to get a response is super impactful. And I've seen that, work well where there's that extension is out in the field, kind of gathering, they know what their business units are looking for. And then they can go to the centralized team for those more detailed questions or those additional kind of heavier end support requests.
So, John, what makes an organization advanced around people analytics?
It would be working towards or solving those business problems, not just data. So volume of data is certainly not it, but being able to, let me say this. So I see some clients where being able to just focus in on first year turnover, being able to solve that, identify what are drivers related to that, where risk pockets, that's a pretty basic issue, but an impactful issue for a number of our clients. So it's not that I have to go tie engagement data to what's the source of hire and how did that go and which are yielding the best results and the most diverse candidates. So it can start with something basic, but it needs to tie to the needs of the business. So if I'm trying to talk to industry like utilities and start to talk to them about, quality of hire issues, they're probably not going to care about that as much as a retailer or a healthcare system. So it's solving a relevant problem to your business is what's going to be, I think, dictating what is a mature organization. We may not, again, have some Harvard Business Journal case study worthy case, but let's start to go partner with the business. Let's start to build up some of that. Let's hear some other opportunities. And we can start to do that. We are going to help our organization. We're going to help ourselves, and we're going to help us get some additional resources to empower our people analytics team as time goes on, as we start to show some of that value we're able to provide.
That's great. As we talked about before, being able to show business value really makes people analytics become, as we talked about, less about HR and more about how does HR become a resource to the business that is required. Forget about getting a seat at the table. It makes HR indispensable when you're providing business insights to those business leaders that they cannot get on their own. We have something in HR. It's actually a really cool thing. It's the data about those business leaders' most important resource. We have that. It's ours. And for us to be able to turn that to their advantage and give them insights that they couldn't get otherwise, that makes it great.
I agree.
Like what you hear so far? Make sure you never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button now. This podcast is made possible by Turetsky Consulting and listeners like you. Thank you for your support. Now back to the show.
So let's go on to topic number 3, John. Where can a user actually begin to be able to make some headway and be able to get through that maturity curve, either from basic to average or from average to advanced? Making that step from basic all the way to advanced seems like a pipe dream, but how do they move up that curve?
Just starting with something. It's starting with a basic problem, starting with some basic data, wrap your head around the data, wrap your head around the ugliness of the data, do what we can to provide standards, reconcile process issues that may exist. Just start with something. If we just put basic headcount data out there and turnover data, we're already doing something better than probably some of the leaders can see elsewhere. So, I've seen leaders that are just wowed by that. And now you can filter this and slice and dice this and remove my contractors, or just show them my contractor positions. Just starting somewhere, having the discussion, not trying to get perfection. I will caution your listeners to also say that volume of data presented in a report or any type of analysis isn't going to be value. I hear a lot of people who are confident that my leaders like a lot of data. They like seeing 8 tables with 65 rows and 18 columns of information. And no, they don't. So
no, they don't.
Start simple. Something that my current employer has provided an opportunity to do is we can do what's called a linked analysis. So I can have just a basic summary. And then from that, I can kind of choose my own adventure. I want to go double click down into turnover. I want to double click down into span of control. So again, just starting with something, presenting that to an end user, having a discussion, having data-driven discussion. And then this where we started the discussion with data governance, but also what's the strategy for this? Because what may happen for some clients that I see is there's a goal we may have the same set of definitions for what we're describing as turnover, but I may not have a consistent process, and I may have to do one report for David, another report for John, another report for Jane. So where we can standardize things and make them a little bit more consistent across the enterprise, it's going to make it easier. So starting with something with a basic view, a standardized view, a consistent set of topics, empower HR business partners not to just share the data, but to start to look to partner with their leaders and know who within HR to go work with. If there's an issue around talent management, if there's an issue around hiring, they know where to go to and start to bring in the relevant stakeholders to drive action.
Absolutely. And so, John, people tend to like to do things by themselves. We talked a lot about having an executive sponsor. We talked a lot about being able to find people who are champions inside the group. Let's say you are one person who's a reporting person inside your organization, and you're hoping to start to build the business case for being able to build the people analytics function or the people analytics capabilities, whether it's to buy a Visier or to just utilize the data you have and to start. Where would someone begin to be able to try and get the groundswell and the investment to be able to build that out?
So I'm going to list ideal state, not knowing the realities of each listener. So,
yeah, that would be tough.
The ideal state would be to partner with the head of HR and say, okay, all things being equal, there's different problems I can look to solve and focus on. What's most critical to you? And is there a particular business unit that you feel, if we could show some value, would be an advocate and could help us tell the story and make the case of the value of this? So I would work to identify, because again, something that I may find interesting may not really move the needle for the business. So looking to your leader to help guide you towards the right area, because they likely have speculate more insight than you. Then go start to, again, present some basic information. Let's hear what some of their pain points are. Something that I've heard, David, in my time is some of the pain points of a business leader may be esoteric things that many organizations don't capture data on. I want to know the knowledge, skills, and abilities for my workforce in 5 years. That's a great goal. I want to understand the ROI of which training programs are going to yield, the highest. Great goal, but probably not achievable as part of a phase 1. So, starting with, is there some lower hanging fruit around turnover? Is there some lower hanging fruit around there's hiring issues? There's some lower hanging turnover around a key role where we're seeing some challenges. Looking at that, that's where I would advise to start.
That's great. So, John, we talked a lot about how do people learn from your experiences and the lessons over the hundreds of deployments that you've done in people analytics. We talked about the kind of things that you've seen across all of those different implementations. We've talked about the characteristics of what makes a company starting at the basic maturity level, where they are as average, and some of the issues with being an advanced group in people analytics. And then we talked about lessons that you've learned about where can people start. Is there anything else that you wanted to add that might help the listeners with their people analytics journey?
Just begin. Recognize that even finance data isn't perfect. I think HR has a little bit of a chip on its shoulder that it feels like there's something wrong with us. We're so far behind everyone else. No other data set's perfect. Finance is restating data on a regular basis, but there is at least a consistent standard. So go make a consistent standard for your organization. Get it out there, share it, be that strategic partner. If you don't quite get it right, that's okay. It's a lesson learned, and we're going to get better with our next discussion with our next leader. So just start. Don't wait for perfection.
Don't wait for those two hands pushing in the back. You've got to take the initiative.
Correct.
Jon, thank you very much for joining and for your insights.
Thank you for your time, David. Let me be a part of this.
My pleasure. And thank you for listening. And if you like this episode, please hit subscribe and provide some feedback. Also, if there's a friend who you might think might find this insight valuable, please send it their way. And if you want to contribute with other comments, please go to turetskyconsulting.com/podcast and please leave some comments. Thank you so much for listening to the HR Data Labs. Take care and stay safe.
That was HR Data Labs. Please visit turetskyconsulting.com/podcast to review the show, add comments about this episode, or add new ideas about upcoming shows you'd like to hear. Feel free to be creative, but please be nice. Thank you for joining us this week on the HR Data Labs podcast, and stay tuned for our next episode. Stay safe.